We've all heard of sleepwalking. When I was younger, I only sleptwalked once or twice, and I remember it distinctly because even though I was sleeping, I was half awake sleepwalking, leaving my bed, walking to my parents' room, but by the time I got to their room, down the hallway, I was completely out, but I was still walking and my eyes were wide. My parents said it looked as if there was a ghost standing in their doorway just looking with their eyes like this, and so they were kind of hesitant, invited me into their bed. They were watching TV, and eventually I became conscious of what was going on, and I'm like, why am I in my parents' bed watching TV? And eventually I went back upstairs. All right, so I've only sleptwalked once or twice. Once I heard a story of a kid who sleptwalked to his TV and started hugging his TV, but I think that kid was lying in order to make friends. That's a whole nother topic. I also have heard of sleep texting. During my teenage years, I had a friend who at 3 a.m. sent me a random, somewhat relevant text about something we had recently been talking about. And there had been some errors in the message, and it looked kind of weird and was worded kind of oddly. And I sent him a message the next morning. I said, why did you send me that message at 3 a.m? Why were you up? He said, I wasn't up. And he said, that's kind of weird that you got that message because I don't think I sent that. I said, well, I doubt there's someone in your house who sent that message. And first of all, that's kind of really creepy to think that someone else in your house could be sending messages on your phone unknown to you. But when we started talking about it and talked about the message itself and the dream he had the previous night, we found out that the text he had sent me had been a sleep text. He had woken up out of his sleep, and unknown to him, he had sent a message to me. A few years later, we actually found out that sleep texting is an actual thing that some people do. But what I wanted to make today's video about is sleep reading, something that weirdly happened to me recently that I wanted to make a video about. So without further ado, let's introduce this episode of Reading Stories with Grady. Hello everyone, in today's episode of Reading Stories with Grady, I'm going to be talking about a reading experience I've had rather than reviewing a particular book. In this series, I will review different books and series and genres and so on and so forth because I really love reading books and I listen to a lot of audiobooks as well. But today I'm going to dive into the sleep reading aspect of reading. And I want to know, are you someone who has ever experienced sleep reading? So let me explain what happened. I was reading Catching Fire for the first time about a month ago. I was super tired, but I was trying to churn through this book in order for me to get through my goal of like reading a book a day or whatever. So I was listening to the audiobook along with reading the book, and I was listening at double speed. I was about in the middle of the book and I started feeling super sleepy, and I was on the recliner couch and I'm like, oh, let's just lay back my head for a little bit because I was reading along with the audiobook and just kind of following along because I personally believe that helps your retention of what you're reading and it helps engage your mind more when you're hearing the words and you're reading the words. And so when I was on the couch, I'm like, I'll just lay back a little bit, I'll close my eyes, and I'll listen to the audiobook for a little bit. So this is when the story gets weird. I woke up, and there on the page was exactly what I was listening to in the audiobook. I was looking at the exact page that the audiobook was on. However, I was like, wait, what's going on? What's going on in the story? So I started looking back at previous pages, and I was like, I didn't read this. What in the world is going on? And then I realized the audiobook was an hour ahead of the moment where I shut my eyes and started only listening to the audiobook. So basically, if you're not understanding what I'm saying, I shut my eyes, and when I woke up, I had no memory of reading anything that had happened in that chunk of the book. I had to turn back 60 pages or whatever to get back to where I previously was. Somehow when I was sleeping, I had gotten on the exact page that my audiobook was an hour ahead. And my only explanation of this is somehow when I was sleeping, my mind was still following along, and even though I wasn't conscious, I was following along with the words with the audiobook. So I've never had anything crazy like that happen, but that just blew my mind because imagine being unconscious, but you are reading while you're unconscious and you're following along with words when you're unconscious. And it's just a crazy thing to me that my mind was so set on finishing that book that day that it did whatever it could in order to stay up to speed. After I finished sleep reading, I went back to where I was an hour before and started reading again, and everything was like brand new to me. I wanted to know from you if I should be concerned. If you want a sci-fi thing to happen like that to you, read Catching Fire, and maybe you will sleep read as well. My question to you is, have you ever experienced sleep reading, sleep texting, or sleepwalking? And if so, what is your weird story that happened below? Another thing that you can comment below is if you have any requests for future books or series or genre talks that you want from me, comment that below. So that's it, folks, for me today. Be sure to subscribe for future stories and reading discussions, and we will catch you next time.